All right, we are back on Morning Line. It's our final segment talking about where we stand on the presidential election. Professor Hannah Schwartz joining us from Vanderbilt. And Professor, all right, so go ahead and give us your take right now. Do you expect today that we may get some resolution on the vote, perhaps from Arizona and Nevada? And if they do come through, as they've said, and it looks like it's leaning toward Joe Biden, that would mean the election is over, would it not, barring the legal challenges that may be there? But do you suspect that? How do you think it'll play out today? And if not today, when?
Well, I suspect that we will get something like that from Arizona and Nevada today. That would put Joe Biden at exactly 270 electoral votes. He then probably will declare victory based on that judgment. Obviously, there is a problem there because it is simply the minimum number, and there are obviously challenges to the count in states like Wisconsin and other places. So. I think the more decisive thing is, of course, watching what happens in Pennsylvania, because its 20 electoral votes shifts the election rather decisively. And if, as we are hearing, you're going to have urban areas like Pittsburgh come in, the president's lead may evaporate and Biden may take a decisive lead in Pennsylvania, and then the election is truly, then would be seen as truly being over. There's also an issue with Georgia. Georgia is also very, very close. I think North Carolina is likely to go Trump, but Georgia is very close, and that could also, with additional votes coming in, also turn. And in that case, you would have a number of paths for Biden to be able to declare a victory in a way that Trump would not be able to unless he wins every one of these battleground states at the end.
With regard to the legal challenges, some of the legal challenges have gone before, if you will. Rudolph Giuliani, the president's attorney, personal attorney, said one of them was a Democrat judge. He goes, well, what would you expect from them? But there have been some other rulings where they have denied the president's request from Republican judges, clearly, in some of these states. And you keep hearing the president saying, well, we'll take it all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court just doesn't take everything willy-nilly. In fact, they've already denied some. I'm just wondering, in your mind, people keep going back to the Supreme Court in 2000 and the role it played. This seems to me to be a different issue here than hanging chads.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, this is very, very different. And the Florida contest was quite different because of the way in which the election had been handled there and the way in which you did have issues of counting and ballots and absentee ballots coming in and all the rest. And the fact that it was just so close and it was just one state. What I'm thinking here is that effectively, if there are multiple ways for Biden to win, then the attempt by the Trump people to go after one state or another would seem futile and ultimately, I think, therefore, would not make it to the court, or the court would find some reason not to take the case. It probably wouldn't amount to enough ballots in Pennsylvania, for example, to really reverse it if they were to for example, deny access to ballots that came in after Election Day. They have up to 3 or 4 days afterwards. If that were to change, it still probably wouldn't matter.
Interesting question for you from one of the Trump supporters who seems to be conceding. And again, I acknowledge it's too early to concede anything in this case. You've got to sit and wait for it. Setting aside the fact that the president is older and up there in years, if he were to lose, some are saying, well, let's have him run again in 4 years, which he could do, could he not? And I'm just wondering, in U.S. history, has that happened before where someone lost after serving a term and came back and won a second term later? Has that happened? Could it happen?
Yes. Grover Cleveland in the 1880s lost his election in 1884 and then ran again in 1888 and won. So he is the only president to have served 2 consecutive 4-year terms. So it has happened. It's permissible under the 25th Amendment and other amendments for a person to do that, to have 2 terms in that way. I would think because of the president's age that would not be the case. But certainly I was speculating with a friend of mine the other night that you could see if the president lost, him trying to have Don Jr. or Ivanka take his place in 2024.
Sure, we've heard that before, and that's a possibility. And one other question as we get near the end of the show here, just kind of to bring up different options. Some people are asking, let's say that former Vice President Biden gets the 270 or above, and it's acknowledged that he is the winner, and the wheels start turning. And I've heard this morning that he has already started his committee to begin with what's it called again? The group that you put together? Transition team, right? Duh. I know that. Transition team. He apparently is to the point where he's already activated his transition team. But I'm just wondering if he does this and it's acknowledged legally and all this, but that President Trump still refuses to concede. Does that matter?
No. I mean, he can refuse to concede all the way up till January 20th, but there will be a new president that the Electoral College will meet, certify that, and that will be the case. I think because of the character of Trump, that he sort of scares people into this sort of sense of acting like a third world dictator that would somehow refuse to leave office. But I'm afraid he has no real choice in that matter.
And that's what I guess it literally is set in stone that come January 20th in our Constitution, and to do otherwise would be basically desecrating the Constitution. There has to be a new president sworn in, whether it's Trump or Biden. But that happens on January 20th, come hell or high water. Period.
That's right.
End of story on that front. And so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
As far as what you see then again with the Electoral College, do you think there will ever be any other argument coming up again about a popular vote being the way? And that would be a very difficult thing to change to, would it not? And I frankly, at one time I used to think, well, it should just be the vote. But then as Taylor said, that can give undue power perhaps to the big states, and the smaller ones don't get as much. So I see arguments on both sides. What do you think really works the best?
Well, I think there's nothing. The Electoral College has had a few misfires in terms of times in which the Electoral College vote went differently than the popular vote. We happen to have lived through a couple of those in recent times in 2000 and 2016. For the most part in American history, it has worked that the Electoral College and the popular vote have come out the same way. And it would be extremely difficult to amend the Constitution to get rid of the Electoral College. So I think in general, it's likely to stay, and I don't think we're going to have any real changes as long as basically you don't consistently get a situation in which the Electoral College and popular vote come out on opposite sides.
And a question here for you. If Joe Biden wins, okay, and again, that is an if. We don't know. It's too early to declare anything, and President Trump could still come along. But if Joe Biden wins, do we think, though, at least the Democrats obviously pleased with that, but disappointed with the way they played out with what they had hoped in the House and the Senate? I think clearly they had a ton of money and were hoping for much more, and the Republicans held serve in most of the Senate races and so basically what we'll be seeing is a change if it happens in the presidency, but as far as the Senate and the House, it's going to be pretty much status quo.
That's right. No, in a way, people voted for divided government, for continued divided government. They did not vote the blue wave that the pollsters had indicated or the media had indicated. So we're really in a sort of status quo with a different man in the White House. That's the central aspect, and a personality very, very different from Donald Trump.
And what we're seeing here, just the latest numbers handed to me in two of the very key states, Professor, Pennsylvania and Georgia. And as I think this is probably what the president suspected and why he feared the mail-in votes. The gap, which at one point I think was over 10 points in Pennsylvania, has now closed to 50% for the president, 48% for Biden. And there's still millions to be counted. And in Georgia, it is now basically a dead heat. And the president, I think, had been leading in both of those to some degree. And now it's almost dead even as those votes come in. So we'll see later today. But as you said, if the president were to lose Pennsylvania, immediately it's all done. Now, I don't know that we'll get a result from Pennsylvania today. But again, if Nevada and if Arizona come through, Nevada with 6 votes, and that would be it as well. As you say, it's a tough road for the president, but not one that you can rule out yet. It's just that the mail-in votes, they believe the majority of them are going to be Democrat.
That's right. Yeah. No, and it does seem to be the case that it's going to turn at least one or two of these states, and that should be enough for Biden to win.
All right. Well, listen, Professor, it's been interesting. And, I just hope, and we've heard it, and I see it on Facebook, there's a lot of anger and divisiveness out there. I did a story in the morning newscast today about how you get past this. I mean, there are friendships that have broken up. We have the holidays coming up. And I know in my family, I have people on both sides of the aisle. And my rule of thumb is, and a lot of them talk to me about it because I'm a reporter and I'm supposed to be impartial. Believe me, I have my opinions and I vote, okay? But I stay in the middle. I don't want to get in the middle of it. And I just, I guess we won't have the gathering we normally have because of the pandemic. And in a twisted way, that's a good thing this year.
I would agree.
I mean,
I think that's probably good for many families.
Yeah. And like any president, when they get in there, I mean, you've heard Biden say one way or another, if he were to win, that he, was elected as a Democrat, but that he wants to be everyone's president. I think Donald Trump said the same thing when he was elected initially. But then when you start getting into the issues that are important to people, trying to be a president for everyone is a very, very difficult thing to do. And there are going to be a lot of unhappy people in this country, however this election turns out. I just think we have to accept the fact that sometimes there's going to be winners or losers. In 4 years, you get another shot, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I just would hope people would recognize that. Yeah.
Professor, thank you so much for joining us throughout this. It's an interesting conversation. We'll do more as we see this play out. I appreciate you being available to us.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me on the program.
Thank you, sir. That's Professor Thomas Schwartz joining us, kind of laying it out. And again, as I say, I see a lot of you on Facebook with your strong opinions, and I respect that. It's good to see that kind of passion. And if nothing else, this election has led to a lot more people registering to vote and voting. And that's a good thing, and I hope it continues, however you vote. That's a healthy thing in this democracy. So many countries around the world couldn't dream of having this kind of voter turnout and the way it plays out. And I think that's wonderful. Listen, we'll take a break, right? And then we'll be back and wrap things up right after this.